Welcome to episode 17 of the Eyes on Privacy podcast for July 28th, 2014. I'm Keith Watson, and joining me, I have Josh Gillam. Say hello, Josh.
Good afternoon, everyone.
All right, we'll overlook the fact that it's actually evening.
Oh, yeah.
Tonight we're going to talk about one particular incident that happened last week, and that was related to StubHub. StubHub is a subsidiary to eBay, and StubHub users were hacked. And basically, this involved about 1,600 accounts for more than $1.6 million. And approximately 3,500 tickets were purchased using regular user accounts whose credentials had been stolen. And then those e-tickets were then turned around and sold on the street at those venues. And most of this was around New York City. And basically it's a form of money laundering. And basically the feds and the Manhattan DA and police have been on the trail of these guys for a while. Basically in March 2013, StubHub reported some fraud for over 1,000 accounts. And so they put some security measures in place that kind of made it a little more difficult for these guys, but they found a way around that. And basically they were able to still compromise a variety of accounts and use that information to purchase additional tickets. And what's interesting about this is that StubHub didn't actually have a security breach in the sense that their accounts were not compromised directly. What happened is that a majority of the compromised accounts came from website breaches that were not related to StubHub. And the users had basically created accounts in multiple locations. Some other location had a compromise, and these users had the same username, email address, and password, and that is what they used to compromise their StubHub account. So that's pretty interesting, and so we thought we'd talk a little bit about that tonight. Some other interesting things that we have on this one is that the state of New York is actually attempting to conduct the extradition of one of the suspects who was in Spain at the time that he was arrested. And I think I forgot to mention they had 6 individuals indicted for these crimes, and one of them was arrested in Spain, and 2 I believe were arrested in London, and 2 in the United States, and I think 1 in Canada. Yeah. Something like that. So it's kind of an international crime ring here, so very interesting.
Yeah, when you look at it, it was sort of interesting with the way that they was able to catch them, or at least start to understand, put all the pieces together, was just based on internet IP addresses, or just IP addresses. They were using the same IPs for the PayPal accounts that they compromised, the bank accounts that they were laundering money through, and they said other financial accounts, and again the details. But they were using the same IPs to log into all those accounts, and that's how they're able to lock down on who they were. So I thought it was, not to promote ways to get around the system, but I think Tor possibly could be a good way to have helped them. So the fact that they didn't use that was...
They didn't really attempt to cover their tracks very well. But overall, it's kind of unique that StubHub, given that they do ticket sales and you can print e-tickets and then turn around and sell those at the venue through scalping means you can turn around the fraud pretty quickly into cash. And then they were taking the cash and then putting that into PayPal accounts to pay off the other criminals in this gang, I guess we'd call them. So it's really a quick way to get some cash and to kind of launder it, if you will. So I don't know, I can't think of another service in which you could turn around merchandise this quickly for cash. Because usually a lot of these concerts, and they listed some of them, their concerts in sporting venues, included Elton John, Mark Anthony, Justin Timberlake, Jay-Z, And then athletic games like Yankee baseball games, Giants, Jets, football, Knicks, Nets, Rangers, the U.S. Open, Broadway shows. These are all events that, with the exception of maybe the Broadway shows, which are nightly in some cases, these are like once in a great while events. There's a lot of promotion around it, and there's a lot of people interested in getting tickets and may not have gotten them until they show up at the venue and buy from scalpers. So they're paying probably more than face value in a lot of cases for these tickets. And even if they didn't, it didn't cost the criminals anything to get the tickets other than maybe buying a bulk amount of stolen credit cards. But they were able to turn that money around pretty quickly. So I think it's kind of a unique crime, I think, in that respect, due to the speed that this could be done.
Yeah, because if you try to take this from a digital theft and compare it to, I guess, a physical old way of stealing, it would be trying to steal a television. I guess it wouldn't be a television. Maybe steal a bunch of video games and then be out at Comic-Con or something trying to sell those real quick, because you have the low investment of zero if you stole all the video games, and then selling them for $50 to $100 at a quick turnaround. But I mean, usually people at Comic-Con are probably not going to want to buy them right then and there because, one, they're trying to get into their comic convention. But so maybe a bad example, but interesting.
Probably another interesting example is if you look at like diamond theft. If you were to have a robber go to a jewelry store, rob it, now he's got to turn the diamonds into cash. What's he going to do? Who do you go to? There's probably, a fence or two that the guy may know, who's also a shady character and kind of suspicious. And that would take a long time to negotiate that potentially, and you're dealing with only one person. If he gets busted, well, you're busted too. But if you look at it from if I have a bunch of tickets that everybody wants and they want it in a very short time frame because that concert only happens once this year in this location, it's no problem. I can sell 100 tickets right on the street, bring in many thousands of dollars doing that, and then I walk away, and you got 100 people who are not even going to report a crime, so because they bought tickets. So,
and they possibly don't even know it was a crime. They could have thought
they have no idea that they were stolen. They look the same as any other ticket, right?
Yeah.
To get you in the door. So yeah, that was interesting. I think the other thing we mentioned briefly that a lot of the user accounts were compromised from other website breaches. Another thing that showed up was that some account information may have been taken from various users because their accounts were compromised through spyware, keyloggers, and malware. And this is a situation in which there may be systems at somebody's house or workplace that actually had keyloggers, and they were capturing their username and password for StubHub and maybe many other accounts too. We have a little less detail on that, and they didn't really talk a lot about which website breaches may have been involved. There's some speculation that Target may have been one, but even eBay had a breach back in May this year, so who knows?
Yeah, so on that, you're looking at, two forms of loss of credentials. One through using the same username and password that you used on other accounts or on other services, and those services got breached and their user database got grabbed and put out for the public or somehow sold. Then the other form of it was on the actual user's machine with the malware, as you discussed. So just a keylogger to grab the user's credentials as they were logging into StubHub. So two ways that they got username information or user credential information, and definitely two ways of trying to prevent that from yourself, which would be try not to use the same username and password on multiple accounts. And sometimes that's hard because some usernames are usually your email address. I guess you could create a different email address for each thing, but that sort of seems pretty tedious. So if you use the same username, try to use different passwords, and it's the age-old, well, I don't want to remember a million passwords. So how can you go about not having to remember your passwords? What's the tool we always recommend?
Well, our favorite is LastPass, but there are several other password management tools available that run in a variety of operating systems, including your mobile devices. Um, so if you're looking for a way to protect all your passwords, make sure you have unique passwords at every service. So yeah, if one gets breached, it's not a big deal. You just need to change the password at one location and not every location, and including the ones you can't remember. So tools like 1Password, LastPass, RoboForm, um, and many others are good tools to use to kind of create unique passwords for each account. That way you avoid this issue of having one account that's compromised used to compromise your other accounts.
So that would protect you on the one front. And then we look at the other front of malware being installed on your machine that somehow was running a keylogger that was capturing username and password data. So the way that you can try to help prevent that, one's the age-old, try not to click on stuff that you're questionable. But sometimes even the greatest people might accidentally slip up and fall. So to reduce from just user error, there's going to be applications such as antivirus and then malware detection programs. So from antivirus, some corporations or companies that you work for might offer antivirus for free for their employees, knowing that their employees are going to be logging into a terminal server or somehow accessing the network from their home machine. So they'll sometimes offer free antivirus. If you want a free one, if you don't have a company that offers that, you have AVG, a couple other ones I can't think. Go ahead, what do you got?
Is one.
Yeah.
And then all the major ones, McAfee and Symantec and Trend Micro. So there's a wide variety of antivirus solutions out there, and sometimes having more than one is a good thing too, even though they tend to argue a lot and fight on your computer, because not one AV system will detect everything.
Yeah, then also I'll use search and destroy, which to help look for SpyBot search and destroy to help look for different malware.
And Malwarebytes is another good one.
Yeah, Malwarebytes too. So I think those are like the two big keys: is not using the same passwords, and then running virus scan and malware checks on your machine to make sure that no keylogging is happening on your machine. I think would be the two first things to prevent.
Yeah, and really the suggestion of how do you manage all these different accounts, you can't remember everything. So you really don't want to have the same password everywhere, and you can't really remember them all. So really you need a password management tool, and those are really the best way to go. They've been around for many years now. They're quite reliable, and we recommend it.
Yeah, it would work out well. I think going back to just talking about the article in itself, I think some of the interesting things was the guys they captured in Spain.
Yeah, let's talk about him.
It's the New York. My mind just died on me. Let's try this again. The New York or Manhattan DA office that's trying to get them expedited, and not the U.S. Secret Service or the U.S. government trying to get them expedited. So it's actually a state versus the country. I thought that was pretty interesting to see that it's down to that level now for the expedition.
Extradition, yes.
Extradition, yes, not extradition.
Yeah, so yes, that's correct. They usually it's one federal government talking to another federal government to say, hey, we really like this guy you got. And in this case, it's actually the city of New York or the state of New York, maybe both, trying to get this extradition run through. And generally, that's not been successful, according to the article. There's been some citation of other efforts in that area, and usually it's the federal government that really has to be involved in extradition proceedings. So that may not work. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, it would be, I guess, interesting to see if they, would probably not go to the UK, even though the money was seems like it was the bank accounts were held in the UK, so the money was getting laundered to the, or at least through the UK. It didn't say if it was going elsewhere once it got to the UK. So if it failed on the US, so I wonder if someone else will try to step up to get them extradited. See if I can say that right today.
No, they will expedite the extradition. There we go. No, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but it appears that most of the people involved, there's quite a variety. There's the Russian national gentleman in Spain, 3 in London, 1 in Toronto. It's a wide variety of people involved here. So if you want all the details, the 6 indicted individuals are actually all the charges are listed in the press release. So it's down to money laundering, criminal possession of stolen property, unlawful possession of personal identification information. It's a wide variety of stuff here. So very interesting. I guess that it'll be interesting to see how StubHub, PayPal, and eBay recover from this, because PayPal generally has not had a good reputation overall over the years. eBay just had a breach. StubHub didn't have a breach, but they're all owned by eBay, so it's kind of interesting to see how this will play out. And there are many competitors to StubHub in this market of ticket sales, so I'd be interested to see how well the company survives this. Of course, as we know, in most cases of security breaches, there might be a slight fall off for a bit, and then everything's back to normal. So usually users forgive rather easily in these cases. So that may happen here as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think a short-term downfall, I think sometimes sort of the same way I think government politics go, is that short-term thing, and then they all forget about it and move on to the next new exciting thing that happened. So the next security breach.
Yeah, they don't tend to stick too well, generally. All right, well, thank you, Josh. I think we've had a good conversation about this. So let's go ahead and wrap up here. I want to thank Josh for joining us to talk about this. Stay safe out there, use your password managers, and keep your eye on privacy.